little bit about what's going on beyond just the recuperation from what I am now referring to as the flow blow. Okay. And that is to say that this week we now have a firm understanding of the process by which we will come to a firm understanding of the process by which they will negotiate with us what it is that we are going to do and how much the insurance will pay. To give you some idea about that process, over the next 5 weeks, they will be making estimates as to how much each of the buildings, we have to take them one building at a time, each of the 3 buildings. So the 3 buildings are Carl Jorgensen, the church, and the chapel. Okay, and then we will have to pick an order in which we want to do them, and then we will negotiate with the insurance adjuster as to how much they're going to be willing to pay, and then we will negotiate with the contractors as to how much they want in order to get the work done, and then the work can begin. We estimate that process will take 5 weeks. So there will be no, that we know of, unless this thing gets on a grease lightning skid, no construction or anything until about 5 weeks from now, which would put it around the 1st of December. Okay? It's going to be a long process. We have made a determination. The determination is that the church is first. Okay? We believe that actually the church is the least damaged of all of the buildings. And so as soon as we can get a roof on, and as soon as people are willing to let us go back in, and that's a question, because, for instance, there is damage behind all of the wood on the altar wall. So we're going to take all that wood out, and then remediate the damage, and then put all that wood back. I don't know how long that even takes, but can we do that once they put the roof on and come back in the church? Maybe. We don't know that yet. Okay? Carl Jorgensen is a whole other story, and Carl Jorgensen is a whole other story because it has to be considered within the context of the capital fund thing and the building of the parish hall and all of that. Remember, one of the plans called for its demolition, another plan called for it being renovated. We haven't made the decision as to whether or not we will renovate or demolish, because that needs to be made in conjunction with what the insurance reimbursement is. Okay? For instance, we know that they're going to replace the roof. Well, if we were going to have to do that under the plan where we were refurbishing Carl Jorgensen, we would have had to pay for that, but the insurance is going to have to pay for that. So it's a benefit in that way. In order to make a sane decision about that, Bill Bittenbender, who, by the way, is my nominee for the next canonized saint, is meeting and has asked our architect, who designed the capital campaign project, to meet with us to help make that decision. So that we're going to do that in the context of how does this fit into the parish hall building, etc., and how does it also fit into what the insurance reimbursement is and all of that, and how do we want it done. Currently, if you went into Carl Jorgensen, you would discover that the front half, that is the half that where my office was and TJ's and Lorraine's office was, that part is basically down to studs. The floors were taken out, the ceilings were taken, I mean, everything's taken out. The underneath, there was insulation, that was taken out. Remember that big pile of stuff that was in front of Carl Jorgensen? That was all from Carl Jorgensen. Most of the contents were totally destroyed. And so the contents that we have to make a decision about, they have an inventory of them. We have to, in the next week or so, go through and say, what are we going to keep and what are we going to throw away? And then the insurance adjuster has to agree to our assessment about keep and throw away, and we go from there. So that's why this is going to take a whole lot of time. I suspect that Carl Jorgensen will be the second of the projects to take, and the chapel will be the last. Let me tell you about the chapel. We were curious as to what shape the chapel was in. But what intervened while we were trying to dry it out and figure out what damage it was, what the shape was, what intervened was Michael. Michael blew the tarp off and blew the some of the slatting open, and so the entire, is that Moore Street? Yeah, Moore Street wall was totally drenched, and all of the interior of that wall is now gone. Okay, it will need to be replaced. Because we're on a historical register, we have to be very careful about the renovation we're going to do and how we're going to do it. The building is insured for $1.79 million, okay? Which probably is about, well, we don't know. But I don't think it's enough to do the renovation of the chapel. So we're going to have to go to the town and other people to make it happen. And I've been on the phone with people who are rectors of famous buildings that are on the historical register who've had similar problems. A very good friend of mine was the rector of Trinity Church in Newport, Rhode Island. Anybody been to Newport, Rhode Island and seen that church? It's iconic. It's a part of that town's, and they had a $4 million renovation they needed to do, and the parish raised $500,000. So they went to the town and said, your choice, we'll plow it under, which is legal, or you help pay for it, and they raised the $4 million to get it done. So we will have to go and do something if the cost, we don't know, if the cost is greater than the amount of the insurance money, okay? Now, that's all the good news. The bad news is, well, we had some good news within the bad news is, initially we believed that the deductible, that is the amount we had to pay in first dollars before anything else got done, was $233,000. And I can promise you that no church has $250,000 lying around. Okay, so we're going to have to deal with that. The good news is that $15,000 of that was attached to the contents, and the adjuster has agreed, we think, that he's going to eliminate that $15,000. So now, instead of being $233,000, it's $218,000. Okay, still a fair, significant amount of change. But hey, 15 here and 15 there, and pretty soon you got 30. You know, so we're doing it. We have, and I got to tell you, this is where my second nominee for Saint is Ruth Smith. Has been running around asking people for money. Not anybody from St. Philip's. The Orton Foundation had given us some money for the capital campaign. I think it was about $3,800, $3,600, something like that.
$4,800.
How much?
$4,800.
No, $4,800 is how much they're giving in addition. She went back to him and said, perhaps you haven't heard, we had this event, so she went back. We got an initial 36, we're getting 48 more. Okay? So that, we got, I think you read that we got a $3,000 grant from the Diocese of Ohio, but that's to feed the people who were really wiped out by the hurricane. It's not for our use. I've made a request from a number of dioceses and from a number of bishops. If any of you know of anybody, oh, and in fact, Dave and Barbara Edwards have children who are, a son-in-law and daughter, who are priests in Lynchburg. And they're sending money from their discretionary fund to us, so to help us retire this deductible. So we're doing some extra stuff. But when you hear Ann talk about it's an interesting time now, and why I wasn't kidding. I mean, I was, but you know, think about increasing your pledge. It's because we've got some mighty expenses to go on. Yes.
It's probably a stupid question, but is there any diocesan money available?
Yes, I will tell you about the diocesan money. The diocese has two sets of funds available to them. One is Episcopal Relief and Development, which is for the relief of individuals, so people whose houses were burned out. So it's basically outreach money that we could apply for to use for outreach. Okay? It has another fund that has an annual distribution of about $47,000. I am a trustee on that fund, okay? And I can tell you the requests are over $1 million, okay? I think it's highly unlikely that we will have anything from the diocese, nor should we expect it. It's kind of like your parents' inheritance. You know, you don't count on it, but if it happens, it's just a little bit extra. I'm not counting on it. Yes?
We pay money to the diocese every
Yes.
month. Could we get them to let us stop that for a while until we get back on our feet?
Well, the answer is we could ask them to do that, and they would probably say no because it's a requirement that we do that, and B, it's based on the amount of program and stuff that they have. So, for instance, the bishop's salary, for instance, the salaries of all the other people. Those don't go away just because we have a hard time. So the answer is,
So
I
it's
don't
going
think...
up, but it won't come back down.
Exactly, exactly. Well, it's kind of like, you know, they tell us that our federal income tax comes back to us. I haven't seen a nickel of it. You know, matter of fact, the new tax thing has asked me for more. So, you know, what can I say? But so it's highly unlikely that would happen. Although the finance officer of the diocese called Lorraine this week and said, if you need anything, let us know. I'm not sure what that means, but our answer to everybody is if we need something, we need $218,000. So anybody wants to know, does St. Philip's need anything, the answer is $218,000 or any portion thereof. Okay? The other things that are going on are the tower in the main narthex is totally drenched, as were the rugs. So the rugs are now all removed, as are all of the walls, going all the way up. The pews and the cushions need to be remediated. Currently, the cushions, the vestments, thank you, Altar Guild. The vestments this week were all taken out and dry cleaned and came back Thursday. And whatever. So the good news is we were able to save those because it was up in the air. And just to give you some idea, my estimate to replace what we had, just investments, was in the $80,000 to $100,000 range, just for that. So that's one that we don't have to deal with. Praise Jesus. I don't know how much it's going to cost to do the cushions and whatever. I know that there's some debate as to whether it's better to replace the pews or remediate. The question is, what's the cost of each? And we're getting estimates on that to find out. But it actually, this is weird, could be cheaper to replace them all. Okay? Now, each one of the buildings has a deductible. So the 218 is the total of the 3 buildings put together. The building with the least amount of deductible is Carr Jorgensen. And so what we're trying to do, because the insurance company will replace some stuff that is there, is put all the replacement stuff into the deductible from Carr Jorgensen so we get the full value of that, what that's insured for, which is $780,000, I think, thousand. You can do an awful lot of renovation for that. If the insurance company agrees, if they plowed it under, that's what we'd get. Since we may not plow it under, therefore we won't get it. And if we plow it under, they may disagree, so they may not reimburse us all that $780,000. Because that decision, as I said, depends on what we're doing with the building of the parish hall and the spending of the capital monies. We are planning, and the Finance and Facilities Board is meeting on Tuesday to deal with the 2019 budget, but also to make sure that we have all of the monies that you all gave and others gave for the capital campaign not in or paying for the deductible. So that you gave it for a purpose, we will continue to use it for that purpose. Is that clear? Okay, and tell your friends about that because I've had questions. Okay? We have some cash reserves and we have some monies that were, thanks to a generous group of people, are for capital improvements and can be spent. Those will probably end up getting spent. And the rest we're going to have to raise. That's why we're here. So any other questions? I think that's pretty much what's going on with the building. Any questions further? Yeah.
Why are apparently from what you're saying, the insurance on the 3 different buildings is linked somehow. Why is that? Why can't we just say we're gonna get rid of the Carl Jorgen's house, take the money, and use that for one of the other buildings?
We could.
I mean,
We could.
Does the insurance company insist that they've got their nose in our business as to what we do with the money?
No, it's, they go building by building to come up with the determination of what the reimbursement will be. And then they'll write us a check and then they walk away.
No.
If we buy an ice cream stand with that, that's our business.
Yay.
It didn't sound that way the way you were describing it.
No, it's just that they go building by building in terms of doing it. And each building is insured for a different amount. We had a bunch of questions as to why the buildings were insured for the amount they were insured for. You know, I mean, best of my knowledge, if we renovated Carl Jorgensen and put it on the market, we could not get $780,000 for that house. But there's a reason why the insurance was set that way. In 2014, Ricky Pierce, who is, amongst other things, an insurance guy, right? Met with the then Building and Grounds people and the then Finance Committee, and they went through and assessed what each of the buildings were, and that assessment was what we insured it for. Every year subsequent, there's a rider on our policy which increases it cost of living wise. Okay, so it got up to $780,000 because it started with an accurate assessment, and that's where it's gotten to. So that's where that number is. Same thing's true for the church, same thing's true for the chapel. They did the same process with each of those. Whether you agree with the numbers or not is irrelevant. Because that's what we paid for and that's what our policy says. I mean, you know, it is what it is. Other questions? Yes.
Are we still going forward in planning for the parish hall?
Yes, sir.
Just as though this has not happened? Or on a much slower scale?
The answer to that is kinda. And the reason why I say kinda is because the swing issue is Carl Jorgensen. And we want to make the decision so that we fold into the decision about Carl Jorgensen both the insurance part of that project as well as the capital campaign part of that project. If you can understand, we've got 2 pools of money there. And so we have to make a decision about where we're going with that. That won't be together. But in terms of the actual parish hall itself, we're going ahead with that project. It will be attached to whatever is, where Carl Jorgensen is, there'll be a building there. Which building that is and how that is, we haven't decided yet. That's the decision we're making with the architect. So it's going on at the same time. I don't know about construction schedules because frankly, we're back to the drawing board of the capital campaign, given that just that one fact alone. Anything else? Yes?
What about priest selection? Is that on hold?
Okay, I was hoping I was going to give the report anyway, but I'll let you know. I met this week with Bob Wright, who's the chair of the discernment committee. Where they are right now is they're making visits. All of the candidates that are being visited have been told everything that's going on here, including getting, you know, those weekly things I send out to you guys and tell you where we're going to meet this. Oh, by the way, next week you'll probably get a regular e-news because we're meeting here next week. But you'll also get a report on where we are with the stuff. Every one of the candidates one candidate said, and at least this is how it's reported to me, well, we think this might be a problem, and the candidate said, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. And they are all, no one left, everybody's there. We're moving right along in that process exactly on schedule, which is great news.
Can you say how many candidates we have on the list?
No. No, we're keeping all that stuff confidential. And just so that you don't build up too many expectations, let me tell you process-wise what I know to be true. The search committee is charged with recommending to the vestry one name. Okay? The vestry can say yay or nay to that one name. All right? That evening, the vestry will be sworn on penalty of death to confidentiality. The name of that person, if that's the one the vestry agrees with the search committee to do, will not be known by you for several weeks after that, until after that. There's a reason for that. There are two reasons for that. First reason is, it ain't a call until the candidate, rector-elect, agrees to be that. On what basis will the rector-elect make that decision? Well, they're praying about it and thinking about it now, but there's this little matter of compensation and all of that. That needs to be negotiated after the call and before the announcement. You're clear about that? The second reason is, this church has a well-honed rumor mill. And you guys are, I mean, impressive to me at how quick anything gets out in this place. You are rank amateurs compared to the entire Episcopal Church. If we announced that I was elected rector, within an hour, my old parish would know that. When you are sensitive to a candidate's needs, the person who is called to be rector has to exit in a pastoral way. That means the congregation needs to hear from that person at the appropriate time if that's what's going to go on, and it needs to be over. My other certainty is that probably highly unlikely, that that person will arrive before Christmas.
Of this year or next year?
This year. No, it better be before next year, because I don't know who you're going to have as an interim. but the reality is that, let's say, and it's not going to happen, they called today. My guess is that any rector worth his or her salt would stay through Christmas in his or her old congregation. And then he or she has to find housing and a place to live here. So I don't imagine it's going to happen before Christmas. That's just between you and me. Dana, do you have anything to add? How am I doing?
You covered good.
Okay. Debbie? Wherever she went? Yes, Lee.
Just getting back to the combination of the capital fund plus the repairs and all that sort of thing, is one of the alternatives that the various powers that be considering just suspending the capital improvement business until all the remediation and stuff is done and we're back where we were?
It depends on which building you're talking about.
I'm talking about any of them.
Well, the church is independent. The church would have there's nothing in either of the possibilities, plans that we have for the capital monies. The church doesn't get any of that. It's all done outside of the church. It's done in that space between the back of Car Jorgensen that faces the post office up to the walkway. Okay? The only thing we have to do is get some way to move people in and out between the two buildings. The chapel has nothing to do with that, except for the fact that was built into that was the renovation of the chapel roof, which we knew we needed to do. So I don't think it's a matter of suspension. I think it's a matter of how do you sequence it. Yeah.
Well, you know, in reality, money is money.
Right.
And whether you're talking about two different pots or one pot, or we have a big situation that includes all of this stuff, and I was just wondering if I'll just say the powers that be, because I don't know who's all on this decision committee, is considering just setting aside this whole capital improvement business until they've reset our whole situation back to where it was before the two hurricanes.
I would suspect that it's going to come out pretty much like that. The only place where they overlap, as I said, is in Car Jorgensen. Okay?
Except it's all money.
I know, but what I'm saying is that we have to make a decision in the capital thing about what the plan is, so we can then spend the money that comes from the insurance in a way that implements that plan. That's the only place where they overlap. I'm real clear that the first thing that's going to happen is the church, which doesn't have anything to do with the capital monies.
But could have. I mean, money is money.
Well, I think at the moment we are waiting to see two things. One, how the 2019 budget shapes up, because that has impact on this. And number two, just exactly what the reimbursements are and what's going to happen. So I think you're right, money is money. I think we would have to be very careful to come back to the congregation to say, since if you gave $10,000, I'm just making this up, okay, for the capital campaign, we would have to say to all of you, we're thinking about using some of that for the deductible. Are there any objections? Because we raise money based on telling you this is our commitment to that. If we're going to change that commitment, then that has to be with the consent of the giver. That's proper ethics in terms of giving. Your point is, I get your point, and just so you know, the powers that be on this are the Finance and Facilities Committee is doing the budgeting, because finances and facilities is what this is all about, right? All of that then goes to the vestry. The vestry votes the budget. We will present to you a budget on December 2nd, which has been adopted, which will, based on what we know by then, include all of these considerations. Yes, Frank?
I was just thinking about the fact that a lot of the remediation in the church will be to the narthex area. Is there any way we could possibly accelerate our plans for building the parish hall, since there's going to be some point in time when we're going to have to enter the narthex again to attach these two structures together?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. It depends on, that's why we've asked the architect to be a part of this. All of the plans that you saw from the architect for the first thing that we didn't raise enough money for, all of that is still a possible, but probably highly unlikely. We're going to modify it in some way. In the modification, for instance, you could create a breezeway from the new parish hall into the existing narthex, and we wouldn't be breaking into anything. I'm not saying that's what we're going to do. I'm saying that's why smarter people than me, architecturally speaking, need to have control of that decision. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Canon Jim,
Yes, sir.
I think this is the time that we should look to the future and not what we did in 1800. Things
Right.
have changed. When I joined my local fire department, I was named the truck driver because I knew how to shift. That's gone. It's new. We've got to look to the future and don't get into a rut and do what we did in the past, because that's over. Hurricanes are more severe than they were 100 years ago. Let's build for the future, as it says up there. Keep our vision growing, okay?
Amen.
And don't get into a rut and do what was done in the past. That is old. That's not good. We've got to build for the future, and we've got to build a house for God so we can worship.
Amen. And let me just add that we've learned a lot of things about the construction of the church, which was done in 2004, 2003 and 4, okay? Some of that construction work was not quite up to par, and whatever. We were supposed to have, just so you know, shingles on the roof that could stand a 200-mile-an-hour wind, okay? I don't know whether the shingles we had were the right shingles, but I do know they were installed improperly. And the insurance company is going after the installer of those things, and that's between them. We're not going to get in that one, thank God. But one of the things, Frazier, that we're talking about is doing it right. Okay? Now, if we decide we want 200-mile-an-hour wind protection in our church, then we will put whatever's on there that gives us 200-mile-an-hour wind protection and oversee that to make sure it happens. Anything else? Okay, so I'd like to switch gears just a little bit, and then I'll let you go. This has been not what I signed up for. Okay. The reason that I'm here in part is I think that God the Holy Spirit called me to be here. The reason in other part is Jimmy Moore. the way it happened was that at some period of time before your last rector had even been arrived, I was asked to do the beach service. I guess she was already there. And so I had a conversation with Jimmy and May after the beach service one Sunday, and apparently he decided that I'm not so full of it as you all think I am. And so when this position became available, he recommended that I be considered for this work. Since that time, every time I see him, he says, "Are you still mad at me?" and what I want to say from the bottom of my heart is, no, Jimmy, I'm not mad at you.
Thank you.
I am not mad at you. I said last Sunday, and I meant it, this is the best job. And part of the reason I think it's the best job is because I've had the opportunity to see remediation of a congregation. I've had an opportunity to see the great faith that you all have. I've had an opportunity to work with some of the most outstanding leaders in the church, and let me tell you, I've been around a long time and seen a lot of leaders in the church. And this congregation has some lay folks in it, more than just the vestry, more than the strategic planning committee, more than the board chairs, more than the members of the board. Awesome people who love God and love their church and want to make it work. And that is humbling. Yes, sir.
I would like to say I think you've done an excellent job under some easy terms.
Well, thank you, but I'm trying to say something about you at the moment. Okay? This is not easy. It's not easy for a congregation to not know week to week where they're going to worship and then show up. It's not normal for a congregation. Just so you know, last year during an interim, the rule is pledging will go down. Last year, during an interim, our pledging went up over 25%. That's not usual. But it is a testament to the will of you all to be St. Philip's. Damn it. No matter what, damn it. And what I want to say about that is that if you want to take some comfort and experience the growth of your faith, just look to your left and your right. That's there, that's real. And TJ and I have talked about this before. We feel blessed. I feel blessed that God provided TJ within 30 days of our finding out that we weren't going to have an assistant. There's an example of God being in the midst of us. There's an example of God being in the midst of us that we weren't slammed more than we were. That none of you are homeless today. There are congregations and people in those congregations who are homeless today. So, and what did I see? I saw in the middle of us getting kicked out of our facilities, a whole bunch of people over at Trinity Methodist Church serving other people who are kicked out of their homes. That is awe-inspiring to me and faith-inspiring. So I want to just say thank you very much for the opportunity to play with you all in this part of God's vineyard. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. It may take a while, but we are learning, as TJ said in his sermon, that we are the church. The buildings are not. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.